In this video, I am going to show you how to get started on the next portion of this assignment, the Jefferson Beach Bungalow, creating the main level floor plan. What you're viewing on the screen right now is the 3D view of what you should have created in part one of the Jefferson Beach Bungalow when you created the foundation plan. So what you need to do at this point is either come down here to the project browser and open the floor plan, or if it's already open, go to that tab that says main level floor plan. Remember, you may often have to resave your project. Okay, my guess is that your screen may or may not look what my screen looks like right here. Before we get started, we are going to make a couple of really quick changes. So we are in the view and we have the ability to manipulate the view. So what we will do first here is we're going to come over here, and in the properties window, I'm going to come to this place that says visibility graphic overrides. I'm going to go ahead and hit edit. And on this dialog box right here, I have a couple of tabs. We're going to start with the model categories. Now on my model, I have the concrete slab in the garage that's showing. I want that to go away for the moment. So under the models category, we have the ability to turn on and off the different family types or different families. In this case right here, I'm going to scroll down, and where it says floors, I'm going to uncheck mark floors. Now, without exiting the dialog box, I can hit or click on the apply button, and you'll see that my concrete slab disappeared. Now that was the only object I had on here, but I also have, if you look at the screen, my grid lines and my section. The grid lines and sections are not model categories, they are annotation categories. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the tab next to that, or next to the models category, and I'm going to scroll down, and the first thing I'm going to do is find grid or grids, and I'm going to uncheck mark that. Again, if I hit apply, you'll see that those grids disappear. I still have my section view, and to turn that off, I am going to come down here to sections, uncheck mark that. Again, I'm going to move my dialog box over and hit apply, and you'll notice that that disappears. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say okay, and now my screen is pretty much blank. The next thing I'm going to have you do is, again, in the properties box, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and you'll see right here that it says underlay. Right now we have no underlay, and what I want to put in here is I'm going to first try my foundation plan and apply that. You'll notice that I've got, it looks like my bearing walls come in here, but not everything. I'm going to go ahead and change that to my top of footing view and hit apply. And now what you're going to see as an underlay to your main level floor plan, you're going to see the foundation plan that you created. Now we won't leave the underlay here indefinitely, but we will use that as a basically a pattern to build our exterior walls. So I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. Now if you remember from the foundation plan, grid lines A and 1 hit this corner, and this is where I'm going to start. So we are on the main level floor plan. So remember, as we're placing objects, the objects are being constrained to the level that you're building on. So because we're on the main level floor plan, if I come back, I'm going to go back to my front elevation. You'll remember that our main level floor plan is at elevation 100, because that is the constrained view that we'll be working off of. The bottom of our walls will be placed at that main level floor plan. So the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my architecture tab, and I'm going to select walls. And the first thing we need to do is we're going to locate that 2x4 bearing wall that we created when doing the foundation plan. Once I do this, once I select the basic wall, 2x4 bearing wall, I'm going to go ahead and hit Edit Type. And from the Edit Type, I'm going to duplicate. And now I'm going to change the description from 2x4 bearing wall. I'm going to label that 2x6 exterior wall. Say OK. Now the last thing I need to do is actually create the contents of the wall. So to do this, I'm going to go to my edit function. And right here, we've got our structure, which is a softwood lumber, but our thickness is 3 inches. Now remember, we call this a 2x6 wall. And if you also recall, the actual width of a 2x6 is 5.5 inches. So I'm going to change that structure, softwood lumber, to 5.5 inches. Once I've done that, what I need to do now is add more material elements to this wall type. Take a look here at this dialog box. We have the exterior side of the wall, and we have the interior side of the wall. That will become very important as we build this wall type. We also have our core boundaries, which this would be the core boundary to the exterior side of the wall. This would be the core boundary to the interior side of the wall. The way we'll build this wall, the core boundaries will be defined as the inside face of wood stud and the outside face of wood stud. So to add more components, we're going to add 3. We're going to simply come down here to Insert. I'm going to click on Insert 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And we'll see that all of these were put inside the core boundaries. To move this, I'm going to go ahead. You'll notice that we have rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to select row number 1, row number 2. And then over here on your dialog box, we have these buttons that will allow us to go up or down. I'm going to go ahead and select that one to go up. You'll notice that that goes up above the core boundary. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here and move the core, the next item up so it's outside the core boundary. And then down here on line number 4, I'm going to select down twice to move it outside the core boundary on the inside of the wall. What we're trying to set up here is a wall that is wood framed or built out of wood, softwood lumber. And then on the exterior side, we're going to put a sheeting material, and then we're going to make an allowance for some type of exterior veneer. On the inside, we're going to basically define what our drywall will be. So let's start down here on the interior side. I'm going to go ahead and change my function from structure, and I'm going to call this a finish type 2. And I'm going to change my by category. Let that come up here for a second. We'll change that by category as far as a material type, and we will call it gypsum wallboard. So this should be predefined in your material browser. Give me a second here. Okay, right here, gypsum wallboard. This is alphabetically, so it is defined as gypsum wallboard. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So gypsum wallboard on the interior of this wall, we're going to define as 1/2 inch. So we'll change that to 1/2 inch. Now let's come up to the exterior side of the wall. We're going to go in here and we're going to put a substrate. And that substrate, we're going to define that category as some type of plywood. I'm going to come down here and see what I can find as far as a plywood goes. Here we have a plywood sheeting. We'll just go ahead and select that and say OK. In our case right now, I'm going to assume this is a 7/16 inch piece of OSB, so I'm going to put in 7/16 of an inch. And then for my final item, I'm going to change that to a finish material 1. I'm going to change that category for right now. Let's come down and see if we can find a siding. Doesn't look like there's anything that is labeled that way. One of the challenges right here is whoever created this materials database, they named it in their own method. And I don't necessarily think in the same terms of how I would call or organize things. So let's just slowly go through here and see if we can find anything that will work for our material on the outside of our wall. Wow, imagine that, I don't find anything. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. I'm going to leave that by category for now. And I'm going to change this to a thickness of 3/8 of an inch. The other thing, if you don't recall, in this dialog box, we can hit preview. As I do this, this is going to show the preview of the wall in plan view. So what we have here from the top looking down, remember this is the exterior side. We have our 3/8 inch of finished material. We have our 7/16 inch OSB. We have our 2x6 softwood lumber. Note the 2 green lines. In this preview, the green lines represents both the core boundaries of the exterior side and the core boundary of the interior side. And then on the outside of this lower interior side of the core boundary, we will have our drywall. We can also, if we choose, move this from a plan view. We can change that to a section view. That's zoomed way out because of the height. If you look over here on the upper right hand side of the edit assemblies, we can change that sample height. In our case, let's just go to 4 foot 0 inches, and you can zoom now in and you can see a little bit better of how that's going to look. Also keep in mind that if I go over here and select each of these rows, you'll notice that each time I select that, it will highlight the preview of the function and the material that you're on. So once we've done that, we've actually created our wall for our exterior. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK one more time. Now that I'm over here and I'm looking up at the properties window, I'm going to go ahead and I need to change a couple of things here. So first and foremost is I want my location line to be set to the core face exterior. So if yours isn't done that way, make sure it's set that way. My unconnected height, and we want this wall to be unconnected, we're going to set that to, for right now, 9 foot 1 1/8 of an inch. So the reason I set that to 9 foot 1 1/8 of an inch is part of these exterior walls are measured, or they're built from what we call a 104 5/8 pre-cut stud. When you take the 104 5/8 and you add a 2x bottom plate, a 2x top plate, and then a 2x cap plate, you add an additional 4.5 inches, and that works out to be a total wall height of 9 foot 1 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to come to where, in theory, grid lines A and 1 cross, and I should have my endpoint snap there. So the thing you need to understand, the way this is set up, wherever that little pink box is where I click, that is going to be where the wall starts at the core boundary. So as I drag this along this back wall, what you'll notice is it appears my wall is going out over the foundation wall. Okay, this is not a problem because that's the reality of how this will actually frame out, is it will go out over that because our face of stud, the plane of our face of stud will be in, the plane will be in the same plane as the foundation wall, and the sheeting and the 3/8 inch finish material will protrude outside of that area. So as you can see, I just went around in a clockwise fashion and completed those walls. Now to get out of this mode, I'm going to hit escape once, and I'm going to go back to my 3D view. And what you'll see in that 3D view is my 4 exterior walls. These 4 exterior walls will appear that it's floating above the foundation wall. Okay, this is correct, and this is how it should look, because remember, the top of the top of the foundation wall is at a lower elevation than the finished floor. There's an actual floor thickness that would need to be inserted in here. We're not going to worry about that at the moment. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan, and being there, I need to go now back to my Jefferson Beach bungalow drawings. And as I'm looking along this back wall, I will note, in fact, let me bring my drawing over here. So as we bring this over, what we'll note is right here we have a step. So top of plate, 109, 1 1/8 inches. So again, that's will be one way how you can understand why I made that wall height at 9 foot 1 1/8. But at this point, we actually have a step in the wall. That wall step is going to go down to 108 and 1/8 of an inch. And if we follow this around, that exterior wall comes to this point, and we come all the way around over to this point right here until we have, oops, it keeps going around, and we come to our step right here to where it steps back up to 109 and 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so let me go ahead and get rid of the drawing, back to my other screen here. So we already developed these exterior walls as a single wall height. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit escape again and get out of that mode completely, and I'm going to select this wall. Once you select an object, it goes into the edit mode inside the ribbon. So if you're looking right here at this icon right here, this is what we call the split element icon. What I'm going to do right here is I'm going to actually come to my wall, and I am going to split the wall. At this point, I'm going to come down here to the lower wall here and split the wall at that point. Okay, in essence, what I've done here is I've taken that single wall and I've created 2 wall segments from that. Okay, let me just undo that so it looks back to how it should be. Once I've done this, I'm going to go back to my 3D view. You'll see that I can actually select the different wall segments, and I'm going to do all 3 wall segments right here. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to come back to the properties menu, and I'm going to change my unconnected height, and I'm going to take that down to 8 foot 1 1/8 inch. And what you'll notice is we now have that step in the wall. Okay, so go back to the main floor level, and you'll see that we have the steps right here, but we know at this point they're not in the right location. Again, if I bring the plan here, what we can find out from this is what we need to identify is where this step location is occurring at. So there's a couple pieces of information here that I'm struggling to see if it exists in the plan. And I don't know how much that it really does. So here's what we do know, and I can actually tell you this, what the intent is right here. We know that the back or the front side of this wall is 6 plus 5'6", which is 11'6" to the face of stud of this wall. We also know that this is a 2x4 wall, which measures 3.5 inches. So that's going to put us at 11 foot 9.5 inches. And then from that point, if I remember correctly, now it's coming back to me, we actually go an additional 2.5 inches to 12 feet. So let me go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to come back here, and what I'm going to do is put in an annotation dimension line right here. And what I want to elongate that wall to 12 feet. Now, as I did that, you'll notice that it actually pushed the other wall shorter, and I can verify that if I go to my 3D view. So 12 feet should be the correct location right there. Let me go ahead and bring my plan back up. So the next question is going to be where does this step occur? Okay, on this step, we can see it's in line with the edge of this wall, and if we bring the edge of this wall all the way over, you can see we've got 14 feet. That 14 feet's to the back side of the wall. So if we add another 3.5 inches, that will take us to the front side of the wall to where that step is at. Therefore, 14 foot 3.5 inches will be the dimension that we need to place that step. So I'm going to go ahead and select the wall. So it looks like when I created that dimension, it actually grabbed the wrong wall. So I'm just going to separate those. I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to create that dimension of that wall segment right there, and I'm going to go for 14 foot 3.5 inches. Go ahead and hit enter. And I'll go ahead and reconnect those two walls. Now, interestingly enough, it looks like I lost my line there, but when I go to the three-dimensional view, my steps are still there. Okay, let me bring up the plan once again. So as I'm looking at this, we do have a couple of other issues happening. So this exterior wall actually starts at this point, comes around at 9 foot 1 1/8 inches. This point it steps down. It still is an exterior wall to 108 1/8 of an inch. We come around right here, but where this wall meets the garage, we actually need to change the wall type. In other words, this wall that we originally built that was 1/2 inch drywall on the inside, a 5.5 inch stud, and then the 7/16 OSB and the exterior finish, that does not occur going along the wall from this point over to this point. In fact, as we look at this, this is what we may refer to as a wall type that we might call a garage common wall. It's a common wall to the house, to the garage. The thing that's different about this wall is how the wall is constructed itself. Generally speaking, because we do have an occupancy separation between, or occupancy use change from the main part of the house to the garage, we have to build this wall with a fire rating. In most current single-family residential, that wall rating would be a 1 hour wall that would be built with 5/8 inch drywall on the garage side with 1/2 inch drywall on the inside. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually come in here and we are going to create a new wall. And in doing that, we're going to also substitute it at the same time. So go ahead and just, I'm going to stay in this three-dimensional view. and I'm going to click on the wall itself. And then I'm going to come over here to my properties menu, and I'm going to click on edit type. So we've been through this process many times already. I'm going to duplicate this. This time I'm going to call this a 2x6 garage common wall and say OK. So now that I've created the wall, I need to reconfigure it to meet the parameters that we want. So we will call the exterior side of this wall the garage side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually highlight my finish one by category, 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to come down here to the delete button, and I'm going to click there. I'm going to now change my material type of my remaining substrate. I'm going to change that to gypsum wallboard. I'm also going to change this back to finish 1. And I'm going to change my thickness now from 7/16 of an inch to 5/8 of an inch. The inside of my wall is the same. It's 1/2 inch drywall. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Say OK again. And there we go. We now have created, not only just created our common wall, but as you will notice, if we click on here in the properties window, we've also substituted that wall. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple things here you guys can try to replicate. I could go back to my main level floor plan, but I'm going to try to do this in my 3D view. I'm going to come back here to my tool that's called Split Element, and I'm going to come right here on my wall, and I'm going to see if it'll let me split that. Okay, I click on it, and in fact it does. So I hit escape twice to get out of that mode. There's my exterior wall. There's my exterior wall. The only problem now is, and it's not a problem, the only thing we need to change is, remember, this wall right here is still the common wall type. So what we need to do at this point is select the wall. We don't need to delete, we just need to select, and we can come up to our properties window, and now we can go find our 2x6 garage common wall, and we can simply just substitute that out. Okay, so this is the nice thing about Revit. In parametric modeling, we don't have to do a lot of deleting. If we have the wrong wall type, we just have to select it, and we just have to substitute it with the correct wall type. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my main level floor plan. And at this point here, you'll notice that's where my wall ended. I'm just gonna, for now, I'm gonna come back here and separate that. I'm also going to separate this wall and this wall. And the reason I'm going to do that simply because if you look at our common wall here, we actually come through here, we jog back over, and then we come back. And so this is still our garage common wall that we need to construct, and so we need to actually build that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start creating these wall types. I'm first going to draw this wall, and then I'll come back and add some dimensions and make sure that I get it located in the correct place. So I got to move this over to my other screen so I can watch the dimensions as I do this. So again, back here in Revit, what I'll do at this point is I'm going to select architecture. I'm going to select my wall type. Now by default, because the last time I placed a wall, I was on the 2x6 exterior, so go ahead and change that wall type to the garage common wall. And at this point, I'm just going to snap somewhere in the center of the existing wall. I'm going to click, actually before I do this, I need to come over because per my plan, I'm still unconnected height. Excuse me, my wall height is still 8 foot 1 1/8 inch. So I want to change that now, because if I don't, then what will happen is I'll have to go back and select each wall segment and change the wall height later. So make sure you change that to 8 1/8 of an inch first. So I'm going to click, I'm going to draw these two wall types. I'll connect them together. So if you look at your drawing, you'll see that's pretty close. Okay, it also looks like that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that dimension and re-add it in, because if I'm looking at my drawing, I want to come from the face of stud, make sure that up here that it says face of core to get that selected correctly. And then it looks like I have my dimension coming to this point. And then it appears it comes to this point. So I'm just going to drag that down like that. So looking at my plan, I've got 3'10" plus 4'5.5" inches. And if I'm doing my math correctly, that should work out to be 8'3.5". So I'm going to select the wall I want to move, 8'3.5" inches. And then so it doesn't appear I have a dimension to where this location is. However, what I do know is from when we worked this before, the face of this wall is at the location. Nope, I take that back. What I'm going to do, let me bring this back over here. So for me to locate where this wall needs to be, what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to come back over here, and what I do know is that we've got 14 feet to the inside of that wall, which is 3.5. So 14 feet minus 2 inches. That, if I did my math right there correctly, that should be 13 foot 10 inches. I'm going to add another dimension because that comes off of this point to that point. 13 foot 10 inches is where that wall should end up being. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to add our exterior garage walls. So our exterior garage walls are going to be very similar to the main exterior walls. So what we're going to do right here at this point is I'm going to go back to my architecture tab, select wall, and I'm going to come here to my 2x6 exterior wall, and I'm going to edit that type. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename that 2x4 exterior. Actually, at this point, I'm going to have you guys name this 2x6 exterior wall, exterior garage wall. Go ahead and say okay. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say okay. So this wall actually isn't any too different than our regular wall. There actually is one different. I'll have you guys fix it in 1 second. I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to actually hold out from connecting these two wall types. And I'm going to put this 2x6 wall in at this point right here. Okay, really quickly, go back in. I'm going to select this wall and go to Edit Type. On this exterior garage wall at this point, I need to edit this, and my gypsum wallboard on that interior side of the garage, or on the garage side of the wall, that needs to be 5/8 of an inch. So that's actually what should have changed right there. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay again. Now, in theory, the way this wall sets up is the drywall, the outside face plane of the 5/8 drywall on this wall should be the exact same plane as this. So instead of me trying to get this all lined up with just my mouse, I'm going to go to my Modify tab. I'm going to select on my Align tool. And then on the Align tool, I'm going to select the plane, which is going to be the face of wall. Take note up here, this does need to say wall face. You do have other selections like face of core, center of core. Make sure that's wall faces. I'm going to select the face of wall that I want to align it with, and then I'm going to go and select the face of wall for the next wall. Once I do that, that will now line those two walls up into place. I'll highlight this wall. You'll see a little blue dot. I can just click, hold down, drag, and connect those two together. Okay, so if I go back to the plan here, what you'll notice is this wall segment of the garage is actually 2x6. The rest of the garage walls are 2x4. So that's why I had you create the 2x6 before the 2x4 wall. So now let's finish creating the rest of the walls going around here. And to do that, we're going to go ahead, go back to your Architecture tab, select on Wall. We've got the 2x6 exterior garage wall, so let's just use that as our model, the wall that we're going to copy to be able to create an additional wall type. So I'm going to duplicate this. This time I'm just going to change this to a 2x4 garage wall. We're going to need to edit, because if this is a 2x4 wall, the stud is going to measure 3.5 inches. And then because this is the outside of the wall, we're going to go ahead and actually drywall this area out here. But because it's an exterior wall of the garage, there's no need to have that at 5/8 of an inch. So we're going to change that back to 1/2 of an inch. Once you get that done, go ahead and say OK again. Now I'm going to bring my cursor and I'm going to line it up with the outside of the foundation wall, because again, this is where our core boundary is. Our face of stud is going to be on the same plane as the outside foundation wall. So I'm going to click and I'm going to just start tracing that foundation wall around. The last two things we'll need to do is connect these walls together. So one of the ways you can do that is just go ahead and select one of the walls. I'm just going to go to the center point. It'll wrap it, and then I'll bring the other one over and it will connect it. Now that I've done that, let me go back to the three-dimensional view, and you can see that what we have here now is all the different wall types. So we started with the exterior walls that were 9 foot 1 1/8 inch. We split those and we made these wall segments 8 foot 1 1/8 of an inch. And we also came down here with the common wall, and then we created the garage walls. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. That is the next step in creating the floor plan. Once we get this all created, our step after that will be coming in and creating all of these interior walls.